Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a greedy homeowner association tries to foreclose on the house of a disabled widow after she is late on HOA payments for just a short time. They then inflated the fees, saying her disability devalued the neighborhood and bought her house for just $5,000 to ruin her life. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. So I have been going through hell and back because of my HOA and I want to share it with everybody. Now, about a year before all of the problems started, my husband sadly passed away. I loved him more than anything else in the entire world. I was devastated to the point that I went into deep depression and things fell a little bit to the wayside. I'll be first to admit that when the HOA fined me a while later, I deserved those fines at first. My husband used to take care of everything and I had not been paying attention to mail and throwing things out without giving them much of a look. On top of everything else, I'm disabled and trying to find at least a part-time nurse in order to help me out. The method that we found works best is that I have one wheelchair that is better equipped for inside of the house and a different one that is better for outside. This let me have a little more freedom by myself and my life started to get back on track. That was when I got a letter letting me know that I had not paid my monthly HOA dues in the last 4 months, and as you can imagine, they were not happy about it. Like I said before though, I was gonna go through a rough time, but don't want to use that as any kind of excuse. Since my husband used to take care of all that, I had to find out where to send the money to and paid the entire thing in full, including the late penalties and fines that I owed them. I decided to pay in person because I was worried after 4 months of not paying. I wanted to explain to whoever was in charge what happened and assure them that it would not happen again. I found the person to give it to and the conversation we had did not go the way that I hoped. Me, hello, I am OP and I have a check for what I owe. HOA, you stop paying your fees. Yes, I understand and I apologize. You see, my husband died and things kinda got crazy. Everything is in there though, including the penalties. HOA, well, I'm afraid that's a little too late for that. Me, too late? I got the latest bill yesterday. HOA, our lawyer will be in touch with you. That did not sound good and I was now scared of why a lawyer was getting involved at all. It was not like I was refusing to pay and at this point stopped feeling guilty about it. They should just get over it and accept the money and move on. I made a mistake and was owning up to it while they acted very cryptic. I eventually got a letter from their lawyer 2 months later stating that due to 6 months of unpaid fees, my house was being foreclosed on and sold at auction to pay my fees. Then inside was an updated statement of what I owed, which was exponentially higher than what the last bill had said. Just to explain, the last 2 months I tried to send them money only for it to be sent back with a notice to wait for their lawyer's letter. These last 2 months of not being paid was not my fault because they were not taking my money. In the fees were usually things like unsightly property, which didn't make any sense to me since I kept my lawn fine. I contacted my own lawyer, but the thing with legal is it moves slow and they had secretly been planning this for months. The auction was a week away from when I got the letter and I had zero time to prepare. For reference, my home was worth about $150K. My lawyer could not move faster than them and the house ended up going for auction where the same woman who I spoke to that one time then bought the house under the HOA's name for only $5,000. I did not see a penny because that was the exact amount they claimed I owed them. Now I had no home and was forced to live with friends while I sorted everything out. I was miserable, but my lawyer assured me that once we sued them, the court would most likely give me back my home. I had the letters from them refusing my money, but other than that I really did not have any evidence except for my word. If I lost this lawsuit, I was not gonna have a home anymore and I'm not able to work and generate enough income for a down payment on another house. The only thing keeping me going were my friends and my lawyer. We got to court and things at first did not really seem to be going in my favor. I had to tell the truth that I didn't pay for 4 months and their lawyer did not want to give me any chance to explain why. They instead said that I tried to use being a widow as an excuse to act entitled and said that I was never gonna pay my dues or fees. I felt like crying right then and there. When my side got out though, one big thing was I finally got to find out what those huge fees for so-called unsightly property were. They said I kept the wheelchair outside and it was destroying property values and was not listed as a thing people could keep on their lawn. And by the way guys, once again, my apologies if you can hear the dogs barking in the background. That, as I mentioned before, is just the sad, poor neighbor dogs that are neglected by the neighbors. These people got like 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 dogs, I'm not sure, and they don't really take care of them. Just a sad reality of pet ownership in some places in Thailand. But anyway, that was when I realized they just did not want a disabled woman living in the neighborhood and found an excuse to try and kick me out for it. They also couldn't answer why they didn't accept my money either time or instead sent the letters with checks back to me instead, already intent to foreclose on my house even though I was willing to pay. They also were supposed to give me at least a month notice before the auction to get a legal team in place, which they didn't do. I was relieved to hear that the judge said the entire thing seemed like some kind of scam and he was not gonna stand for it. Luckily, my property had not yet been touched because the lawsuit kind of paused everything when it came to them selling the house or trying to tear it down. I was told to move back in and that I was not gonna have to pay a penny of the fees they got from selling my house to themselves. So it did not just end there, because now I was able to sue them because they violated ADA laws that protected people with disabilities like myself. They wanted to charge me and kick me out of my own home because I was disabled, which was extremely illegal. They were gonna have to give me a huge payout and all the HOA board members were forced to step down because they were worried about personal lawsuits as well. I was protected and even though I probably could have gotten away with it, made sure to pay my HOA dues monthly anyway. It was not an optional joining, so I was kind of stuck being part of one since I cannot really handle moving. I will say that I never received another fine for having a wheelchair outside and instead the former HOA and the current one all avoided me like the plague. The HOA had very little money now and certain programs got stopped that people seem to hate anyway because they seem to exist just to fine people. I still cannot believe somebody would be so heartless to try and take a disabled widow and illegally try to foreclose on my house because of that. And here, ripe stars, as we saw in the past and in this story as well, some HOAs can be really cruel and they don't give a damn about disabled people or any people for that matter. Of course, that doesn't apply to all HOAs, but at least the ones on Reddit seem to be really the worst of the worst. If you have ever lived in a good HOA, I would love to hear your story in the comments. And while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously in regards to pushing the damn YouTube algorithm. And the next one is titled, Unbelievable Karen in the ER. So my boyfriend had a little accident at work today and needed some stitches. While we were waiting, a car stopped right at the entrance. We assumed they had someone disabled in the car and just wanted to load out real quick and then find parking. Well, guess what? It was Karen and she was alone in the car. She got out and waddled inside. Seriously, she walked like a pangolin. If the dialogue seems a bit weird, that's because I left quite a bit out and only gave you the most important sentences, which I paraphrased to give you all the info you need. Or do you need 5 versions of, I'm gonna sue you? So a nurse filling out paperwork with us shouted at her, "Nurse, you cannot park there. That's for ambulances and bringing in emergencies." Karen, "It will be just a minute. I just have a few questions." While she said that, she kept walking. Nurse, "Be that as it may. That's for ambulances only. Seriously, you need to park your car away." Karen just waved her hands like swatting away an annoying fly and started to walk faster. Now the nurse suddenly talked in a very hushed voice so that we could only hear her, but Karen couldn't. "Nurse, we have our own tow car that can be here in 2 to 3 minutes. Move away now or your car is gone by the time you return." If a car is blocking an emergency entrance or exit, this can cost lives, so they are not messing around obviously, even when most of the time they only tow people parking in the handicapped spaces for no reason. Then she winked at us and said, "You both heard me warning her, right?" Me, "Yes, loud and clear, you warned her and she would get towed." Then the nurse called security on her radio and within 2 minutes they were there hooking her car up. We were still waiting when I suddenly heard a screech. Karen, "You idiot, where's my car? I have places to be." Nurse, "Security's on their way, they will explain to you where it is." Karen, "They better bring my car or I'll call the police for theft." Nurse, seeing that security was already almost behind her, told her, "I was calling after you, telling you that you can't park there. Because this is for emergency vehicles, but you ignored me even when I shouted after you that you'll be towed and that this will be an expensive mistake." Karen lost it and tried lunging at the nurse, but the nurse just stepped back and security grabbed her, so she hit the security guard instead. They then tackled her and called the police. To make a long story short, police came and we told them the nurse shouted after her that this is for emergency vehicles only and that she'll be towed several times, but Karen simply didn't listen. Karen got arrested for assault and a whole bunch of other stuff. The nurse later brought us to the examining room and told us the assault was probably her mistake. She only wanted to teach her a lesson by making her pay for the towing, but since they had to call the police, she will also get a ticket for blocking the entrance to an ER, and the fine for that is a lot higher than just the towing, plus all the charges. Edit: since several people have asked how my boyfriend is doing, thank you very much for caring, pretty good. He works with mentally disabled kids and young adults, and one of them decided to headbutt him and created a laceration on his head. It looked very dramatic since head wounds bleed like crazy, but ultimately it was relatively harmless. There were a couple of stitches, maybe 3 or so, and a good story to tell the colleagues and scare the newbies. The next one is titled Entitled Male Karen. So I've heard that Kevin is the male version of a Karen, so that's what I'll be calling the main character of this story. I've worked retail management for over a decade and have dealt with my fair share of Karens and Kevins, but this one particular Kevin sticks out. The setting is a retail drugstore chain. He was always complaining about everything. Everything from a customer smoking in the parking lot to having to wait 5 seconds for the cashier to acknowledge him. He once called me a greedy businesswoman when I refused to sell him the display model for a fan. There were plenty of those fans in their boxes, but the main problem was it was in the pharmacy. He took a multitude of prescriptions and he had our state's version of Medicaid insurance. Medicaid is government-funded insurance for the low-income earners. Although it's free, it comes with a lot of restrictions and paperwork. One of the main restrictions was that it will only cover generic medications unless authorized by a doctor. To get this authorization, we faxed the doctor a TAR form. Kevin demanded we give him the name brand, claiming the generics didn't work. Every time we explained to him Medicaid doesn't cover name brand drugs, every time we faxed his doctor a TAR form, and every time his doctor rejected it. His doctor even asked us to please stop faxing him. Kevin swore we were trying to kill him and that he was gonna sue us. He would specifically mention how high his blood pressure was and that this stress was worsening his cancer. We politely told him to call his insurance and to please take his business to our competitor across the street. Our competitor asked us to please stop sending him over because he was banned. Several times he did call the Medicaid offices and they confirmed that they would only cover generics. That then calmed him down for a month, then it was back to being a Kevin. After now over a year of dealing with Kevin, his attitude finally cost him. To get your prescription, you can either come inside the store and get in line, or you can go through the drive-thru, similar to fast food. This particular day, Kevin was in the drive-thru getting his prescriptions. Then he started to demand bread, milk, eggs and other groceries. We told him that the drive-thru is for prescriptions only. He kept demanding that we get him his groceries because he is old and disabled. After 5 minutes of refusing to leave, the store manager comes and asks him if we get him his things, will he please leave? Kevin said yes, and then it pretty much turned into a hostage situation. Kevin made more demands, the manager had enough and decided to call the police. What happened next depends on who you believe. According to the police, when Kevin refused to leave, he appeared to be having a heart attack, so they dragged him out of his car. According to Kevin, the police took his keys away, so he could not drive. Whatever happened, Kevin was in the back of a police car, and his car was parked in the middle of our drive-thru. We then called a towing company to please remove Kevin's car. Kevin was unable to pay the impound fee, so he lost his car and had to rely on friends and public transportation to get him everywhere. The irony I see in all of this, Kevin constantly complained about his blood pressure being too high. Maybe if he was not such a Kevin, his blood pressure might not have been so high, and he would still have his car. And the next one is titled Dealership Karen. So a few years back I was selling a cell phone on good old Craigslist. I had tons of hits, but Karen came in first and said she would come to me immediately. I told her to come on down to my work. At the time I was in my very own little trailer as the place I was at was remodeling and it was slow season. My final message to anyone buying from me is a confirmation of price. Just so we were clear, the price is $400 and it comes with XYZ. No response, Spidey senses start tingling. About an hour later, Karen walks in. Karen, I'm here for the phone. I had the phone charging on my desk, so it was ready for the inspection. The phone itself was flawless. Karen then picks it up and looks at it, scratching at non-existent stuff, giving that little sniff of disapproval, and then says, "It's a little rougher than I thought." Me, nah, it's been fully encased in Invisor shield from minute it was taken out of the box and there's not a scratch on there. Karen, well, it's not worth $400 for me. Me, that's the price, take it or leave it. Karen, I only brought 250 bucks with me. You take it or leave it. I had already taken the phone back after her inspection, so at this point I put it in my desk drawer. Me, leave it is. Have a nice day. Karen, excuse me, I drove almost 2 hours to get here and I took time off work to pick this up. Me, that's super neat. It's still for sale at $400. If you need to pick up more cash, just about every bank you can think of is within a few miles. Karen, I want to speak to your manager right now. Me, sure thing. 2 trailers over, door on the right, have fun. At the time I was selling insurance out of a dealership and a good friend of mine was the desk manager, aka my boss. As she stormed out, I messaged my friend boss about the crazy lady coming his way. A few minutes later, my desk phone rings from my boss. Boss, OP, did you refuse to sell your phone to this lady? Me, yep, she wouldn't pay the agreed upon price, boss. Boss, are you willing to negotiate the price? Me, nope, I already have other offers for the full price. Boss, ma'am, we appreciate your time, but the price is a firm $450. Karen in the background, what? He said 400. Boss, and you only brought 250. Sounds like you're short either way. Look, I can work out a deal for you here if you pay me $200. I will get him to sell you the phone for 250. I could almost hear her gears turning before she said, F you, and left slamming the door. Message from my boss, don't sell crap that is not insurance at the dealership, idiot. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you did, I would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe leave a comment as well as like the video if you enjoy my content. Thank you so much in advance, and I will see you again tomorrow.